Hi, and welcome back to one of our online lectures here in World History. As we continue here with the Roman Empire, we are finally going to look at what caused the fall of the Roman Empire. There's several factors that are going to be involved here, some of which the Romans could have avoided had they had some hindsight. Some of them they couldn't have. So we're going to take a look at several different factors that caused the fall of the Roman Empire today. We only have one constructive response question. We're going to attempt to answer through this. It just says, summarize the factors that contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire. And really, in the end, we're going to have 5 different things we're going to talk about. 4 weakening factors and 1 immediate factor, as you're about to find out. So what's going to be our path to learning here? What will we learn? Of course, we're going to look at the factors that weaken Rome, the social, political, economic, and military factors. Those are the 4 factors that weaken Rome, but there's an immediate cause that really brings it all coming down. We'll talk a little bit about Emperor Constantine in the process, and then ultimately it's the Germanic invasions. That's the immediate cause of the fall of Rome. Rome was so weak that they were not able to handle new people being pushed into their lands, and ultimately Rome falls in 476 AD. So that's going to be our story for today. So we have to understand that Rome was slowly falling apart over several hundred years. By no means did one group just come in and take over one day. The Romans didn't just have power and all of a sudden that power was taken away. It slowly faded to a point where Rome could be invaded and taken over. And that took a long time to happen. So when we go back and look at a century of crisis, the Pax Romana, that 207-year period of peace and stability in the Roman Empire, that came to an end with Emperor Marcus Aurelius around 180 AD. The rulers that followed Marcus Aurelius were unable to manage the large empire and its growing problems. And that's the biggest weakness Rome had, is by giving power to one emperor. You're really basically saying our empire is as strong as those emperors, and if those emperors are pretty bad, you're going to have some problems later on. So the result is the Roman Empire began to decline, and that's not shocking when you look at how emperors can take care of themselves or they can take care of the people. And if they don't take care of the people will ultimately suffer. Now, I'm going to use an analogy. For those of you who've ever played the game Jenga, the whole fall of the Roman Empire is going to be like a game of Jenga. So when we see our best emperor, who is Emperor Augustus, listed here at the top, it's stable, it's secure, it's powerful. It's like you just started your game of Jenga. It's kind of difficult to push that tower over. But we're going to take blocks away from this piece by piece. And by doing so, we're going to weaken the Roman Empire really over the next 400 years after Augustus. So what we're going to see here is this whole empire is going to topple for these 4 reasons: social factors, economic factors, political factors, and military factors. And we see all 4 of those here, and we're going to talk briefly about what each one of those means. So many factors weakened Rome over the course of several centuries. By the end, it was too broken to save. Once a game of Jenga gets to that level where the tower is very, very unstable and it starts to fall, you're never going to catch it. It's impossible, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. This is a chart from your book that lays out these 4 different factors. It's just a different look at this. So I encourage you to pause and take a look at it. But these are the 4 different factors: political, social, economic, and military, that I'm going to describe here. And then we're going to get to our immediate cause of the fall of the Romans, which is these Germanic invasions. So we'll see how that all plays together. So let's start with the economic problems that led to the fall of Rome. Number 1, without the Pax Romana, trade was disrupted by hostile tribes and pirates. Basically what that means is it's not safe to travel anymore. But when it's not safe to travel, you're not going to trade as much. And therefore your whole economic system is going to definitely take a hit. It's going to weaken in that process. One of the other things is the Romans ran out of new gold and silver sources, so they didn't have any new gold to use, which means they couldn't come up with new currency. So in order to pay for what they needed to pay for, they needed to raise taxes. And of course, that burdens the already poor population. We've established several times in this unit that 90% of the Roman Empire, the people in it, are poor. So if you raise taxes on them, you're going to have some issues with those people. Of course, when you raise taxes, you also run the risk of high inflation. Inflation is devaluing in money. So you create more money, it equals inflation. It means it costs more to buy the things you need every day. And if the people who don't have money now have to pay more to get the things they need, clearly you're going to have an issue amongst the poorer classes. You also had sort of an issue. The soil in Italy and Western Europe became increasingly less fertile. You see that image there at the bottom, kind of looking like a dry patch of dirt. When that happens, you have less food. And when you have less food, people are going to starve. So you're seeing a lot of economic problems here going on in Rome. The second main problem that the Romans fell into was some political issues. If you look at why most empires fall, there's usually some type of political weakness going on here. So one of the weaknesses that we're actually going to talk about later on in this lecture is how the Roman Empire splits. We're going to have the poorer western half falling apart while the eastern half continues to thrive. And so we're going to see how Emperor Constantine moves the capital over to that eastern half, and that eastern half is called Byzantium. So this will make more sense towards the end of this lecture, but understand this was a decision that ultimately hurt the Romans. So moving the capital to the east in Byzantium under Emperor Constantine. Another political problem the government was having is the government started to be controlled by the military. They started having interference by political military leaders that wanted political power. That can certainly lead to some power struggles. The last one is just simply terrible emperors, and we'll look at a number of them on the next few slides, such as Nero, Commodus, and Caligula. They raped, they murdered, they impoverished their people, and as I always say in my class, the goal of any world leader should be to take care of their people. And some of these Roman emperors just chose not to do that, and so that's definitely going to lead to the decline or fall of the Roman Empire. Now, you can take a look at each one of these. I'm not going to talk too much about these emperors. Here's Emperor Caligula. You can see he liked torture, wanted to make his horse a member of the Senate. So these are just examples of bad emperors. And I'm not going to put these on the test, but you can certainly stop and look at these if you want to see why the political problems extended beyond just a couple of different emperors. Here's Nero again. Certainly you can pause and take a look at this. We saw him in engineering an empire. And he was bad for a lot of different reasons. Commodus, same thing. Some of you have maybe seen the film Gladiator. Here's Commodus in Gladiator. Again, if you want to take a look and see why he was a bad emperor, you can pause and take a look at his information. Another emperor, Elagabalus, is definitely another bad one here. So again, you can take a look at these. The third factor that leads to the fall of Rome is social problems. This really deals with the people. One of the examples are the people were slowly losing their confidence in the empire. They didn't really feel like the empire was taking care of them anymore. They really didn't feel like they had much of a say anymore. They were really losing their confidence in what it meant to be Roman. Of course, one of the real big problems here is there was still a strong contrast between the rich and the poor. So the contrast between the rich and the poor was still very wide. And what that means, this could be an economic issue, but it's also a social problem because the poor are going to slowly see themselves as subjugated. They're going to see themselves as oppressed. They're going to see themselves as meaningless. And when you're trying to fit into a fabric of a social group, that can be a big issue. So you had a real big divide here between the rich and the poor. The last one is simply a decline in interest in public affairs. People really didn't care to be a part of the Roman Empire anymore. They didn't care that they could or couldn't vote. They really didn't want to buy into what Rome was anymore. And what you're really doing is you're unraveling the fabric of what it means to be Roman. And if people don't have that anymore, they're not going to be so upset when things start to fall apart. The last of our four big factors is military factor. Excuse me. Without any money, you have low funds for defense, which means your soldiers aren't getting paid. That's problematic. So what do? You go hire people who will fight for less. You hire mercenaries or foreign soldiers. And so they were hired because they accepted lower pay. Then what you get out of that are basically soldiers who aren't as good as soldiers anymore. Soldiers were less disciplined. They were less loyal. They were not the legions and legionnaires that we had seen at the peak of the Roman Empire. These were pretty weak military men who just wanted anything in terms of money to be able to feed themselves and their families. So you've got a pretty weakened military at this point, which of course is going to matter if anybody tries to invade you. You're not going to have a force strong enough to fight them back. So we've got our economic, social, political, and military factors that are weakening Rome from the inside. Rome hasn't fallen yet, but it's now kind of ripe for an opportunity if somebody does want to come in and try to take over. So that's where we're going to stop for now. We're going to end part one right there. So go ahead and hit pause or stop, and then please queue up part two. And we'll continue on looking at why those factors led to the eventual fall of Rome with our last immediate cause, the Germanic invasions.